Today we're going to be working on Vogue pattern 1923, and we are actually going to be doing view B, which is a long sleeve pattern. The only difference between view A and view B is the length of the sleeve. We will be using a stretch velvet. Um, And so let's get started. Let's talk about the fabric pieces. So we have piece number 1. So piece 1, you're going to cut one of the front. So we've done that. And just so you can get a feel for how it's going to look, this is piece 1. Just spread this out a little bit so you can see. This is piece 1, which is the front. And so you can see the bottom, and this is the top. So this is piece 1. And then here is piece number 2. So piece number 2 is the back, and you are actually cutting it on the fold. And so let me just show you what that piece looks like. Opened. Again, this is the back. And I'm doing this in a size 14, but this is the back, top of the back. And here is the bottom of the back. And again, you're cutting this on the fold. So it's cut on the fold. So that's piece number 2. Here's piece number 3 is the sleeve, and you need to cut 2 of the sleeve. So we're cutting 2 of the sleeve. And it looks like I've only cut 1 of the sleeve. So you need to cut 2. Of the sleeve. And this is normal for the sleeve. It has this kind of edge that goes up, and that's because there's going to be a dart that's going to be going right there. So again, you need to have 2 of those. And then piece number 4 is the front band. It's the front band, and you're going to cut 2 of the front band. And here's what that looks like. The front band, and you need to have 2 of those. Piece number 5, which you are also cutting on the fold, and it is the back band. And you're only cutting 1 of these pieces on the fold. So here's what that looks like open. And you're going to again cut it on the fold. Piece number 5. And then you have a couple of other pieces. So you have piece number 6. Which is the lower front facing. And it's just a little piece. That's piece number 6. And then you have the crotch piece, which is piece number 7. You're only going to cut 1 of those, the crotch facing. And then you have piece number 8, which is the front and back facing of the leg, and you are cutting two of those. And I have these two pieces here, right here. So the first piece that we are starting with is piece number 1, the front. And on the front, we are going to reinforce the front edge, the upper edge of the front. So right here, we are going to basically do a reinforcement stitch right here, starting about right here and pivoting at the circle and then going here. So on our fabric, it is literally going to be starting here, pivoting at the circle, and then going here. Okay, and we have done a reinforcement stitch again, going straight down to the center, pivoting at the circle, and then going straight there. That's the first step. And then we're going to take the scissors and we are going to clip right at this center piece. We're going to do like a nice little clip. Okay. Next step is to take piece number 2. So we're going to put piece number 1 away for now. Take piece number 2. Piece number 2. And we are going to stitch the front to the back at the sides in a double stitch seam. So we're going to take piece number 2 and we're going to open it up. So this is piece number 2, and we're going to take piece number 1 and we are going to lay it on top of piece number 2 with the right sides together. And we're going to match up those seams under the arm. And we are going to do a double row of stitches down, just down to the dot. So we're going to line those raw edges up and we're going to clip or pin, whichever works better for you. And I'm just lining up my raw edges. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Again, I'm lining up the raw edges. And we are going to do a double stitch just down to the dot on both sides. And piece number 3. Piece number 3 is our sleeve. We're going to pull out a sleeve. So grab your sleeves, and again, you should have 2 of them. And in piece number 3, we are putting our darts in. So remember, at the top of the sleeve, it looks a little funky, a little weird at the top, the way the top of the sleeve lines up. My fabric is curling a little bit, so it's hard to see it, but if you match this top up, you'll be able to see that there is a dart in here. So you are basically doing a dart in this top part right here on both pieces. One of the ways that I easily do my darts, especially on fabric that is difficult to see with the markers or the chalk, is I clip a little notch in each corner. And this one is a little bit easier because it's got this weird shape to it, so you can easily kind of tell. So I clip those, and then I line up those 2 little cuts. So in this case, I'm going to line up those 2 cuts right there. I will flip this over and line up those 2 little cuts to make my dart. Like that. And then I'm going to just take my dart and start at this edge and then take it right to the end. And now you can see that my dart is fully formed. Now we've put our dart in. You can see the dart is in the sleeve on both sides. This is what it looks like once it's closed on the closed side. So this is what it looks like here. You can kind of see a little bit of the stitching. And this is what it looks like opened. Okay, so we've done that to both sleeves. And now we're going to stitch the sleeve together. So right sides together. We're going to close each sleeve. Line up these raw edges. We're going to stitch all the way from one end to the other. And then we're going to stitch right down this end. Two rows of stitches. 1 and then 2. Okay. And now we are going to be dealing with the sleeve, the end of the sleeve. So we're going to turn this up just 1/4 of an inch. And then we're going to do another top stitch. So it's basically going to be 2 rows of stitches. So we're going to turn it up, do 1, and then we're going to do another one. Okay. All right, so we have finished our sleeves. Cut off some of this extra thread. And here are our 2. Here are two sleeves. We're going to take our sleeves, put them right here. And here is our front and back. And now we're going to take our sleeves and we are going to match them up to the armhole edges. So here is our armhole edge. Remember, we just stitched it together right at this part, leaving this bottom part open on each side. So here is our sleeve. And you're going to do it right sides together. You're also going to be matching up your notches. So we are, okay, so you have your bodice with the wrong side facing out, and you're going to take your sleeve and you are going to place the right side on the inside, line up the seams. You're lining up the seams. And yes, you are lining up your seams and you're lining up your raw edge to your raw edge. So it should be basically like this. And you may have to stretch it in place a little bit. So it should look like this. This is what it should look like. So this is your bodice, and this is the armhole, and then your sleeve is the raw edges of that are matched up. And then you're just going to make sure you clip, and then you're going to do, it's recommending 2 rows of stitches here. All right, and before we sew, we're going to put the other one on. So here's what it looks like from the inside. This is my sleeve. You can see this is my sleeve, and it is pinned to the armhole. So I'm going to just tuck that in, and now we have our other armhole here, and we have our other sleeve. And again, we're going to put it to the inside, right sides together. And we're going to match up the seams. The seams first, match up the seams. And it's going to be a little tricky because you have that double stitching in there, but if you put a clip in there, and then I just go right to the edge, line up that edge, just like that. And just clip. And now you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Here's that edge. Again, my fabric is like rolling a little bit, so it's a little trickier, but Okay, and this is what that side looks like. So just zooming in there so you can see better. It is, you're just basically, you have your sleeve on the inside. This is your sleeve, and it is right side to right side. So this is the right side of the bodice. This is the right sleeve side of the sleeve. And you have lined up that bottom half of your sleeve to the bottom half armhole of your bodice. And we're going to do 2 stitches around here. Okay. So the sleeves are now in. Sleeves are in. For the most part, they are in. And your bottom part is still very much open. But your sleeves, which is what we've worked on, are now in. So we're going to take this and we're going to put it to the side. And we are going to get piece number 4. Here is piece number 4. Piece number 4 is our front band. And we should have 2 of those cut. And we are going to be putting gathers in the upper arm edge of the front band between the small and the large dot. And then we're also going to gather the upper side edge of the front band between the small and large dots. So basically on either side, and the best way to illustrate this is by looking at the actual pattern piece itself. So we are going to be doing a gather from here to here. So if you look at this, you're going to be doing gathering stitches from the small to the large dot, and then again from the large dot to the small dot. So another gather right here. And then you're also going to be doing gathers on the other side, just at the top from the small to the large. So if you look at the top of your band, you're going to be doing gathers on both sides. Put that in frame. Let's see if I can make that a little bit bigger so you can see. There we go. So you're going to be doing gathers on both sides, this side and this side, from here to here. And then you're also going to be doing gathers on this curved edge, just this bottom part from here to here. So we're going to get started and do our gathers. Make sure you have your markings in place. I am actually going to use a gathering foot because I find that I like gathering foots. So I'm going to use a gathering foot to put my gathers in. And here is my gathering foot. I find that setting my gathering foot at 6 stitches, a gather every 6 stitches is typically what works, what has worked. So once I have my gathering foot on, I will move that, and I actually have already moved it to 6. So you have 0, which is basically no gathers, 12, which is a gather every 12 stitches, 6 is a gather every 6 stitches, and 1 is a gather every stitch, which is the tightest. So 6 is usually what I do when I'm trying to replicate a gather using the other method. If you're going to use the, what I would call the traditional method, then you're going to put in 2 rows of basting stitches. So let me again use my pattern piece because it's easier to see and demonstrate. But so basically in your seam allowance where you're going to put your gather, so let's just use this side for example, you're going to put 2 rows of a basting stitch. I usually set the width at 5.0, and you're going to use 2 rows. But before you start, you're going to pull a little bit of the string from your thread just so you have some tails to be able to pull and create your gather. And then when you finish your gather, you are going to, instead of just cutting it, you're going to leave a little bit of string at the edge. And then again, you're going to create another row in your seam allowance. So your seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch. You're going to create another row of stitches of the basting stitch, doing the same thing, leaving some extra string at the top or thread at the top so you have a tail to pull. And then when you finish your gather, you're going to leave some thread at the end. So again, you can use that to create the gather. And then because they're asking you to create a separate gather, you're going to need to do another kind of separate row here. And so you're going to start again, leaving a tail, a little bit of thread, and then you're going to create basting stitches till you get to this end, and you're going to leave some extra thread at the end, and then you're going to create another row. You need 2 rows of basting stitches to create a gather, and then you're going to repeat the same thing on this side, but only at the top. You're not going to do it at this bottom piece. Okay, so here is my front band, and I'm going to zoom in so you can see so this is the side where you have gathers on the top and the bottom. This is the bottom part right here, and here is the top. You can see I have a little bit of a gap right here where I restarted the gathers. So this is the top part, and then this is the bottom. And then let me just show you the other edge. And so here's the other edge, and here's the part that has no gathers to it, and then the bottom part that does have gathers. And that's using my gathering foot. It will look a little bit different when you use when you use the traditional method, but in the end, it will all look the same. So it just looks a little different, in this, when we're doing it this way. Back to it. So it says we need 4 stay strips. If you don't have stay strips, you can use fusible interfacing. You can use fusible interfacing that is for knits or, again, wovens or knits. But knits is because we're using a stretchable fabric. You can use that to cut 4 strips, 4-inch strips. And you can see that I have done just that because I did not have the stay tape. And so, well, I thought I cut 4 strips, but let's cut them again because I cut on the fold. So we need 4 5-inch strips. And then we're going to be transferring some markings over to these strips. It says that we need to transfer the large and the small dots over to these strips. So I just wanted, if you have stay strips, that's fine. But if you don't, then you can use fusible interfacing for knit. And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be taking one end, you're going to be marking a small dot, and one end you're going to be marking a larger dot on 2 of the stay strips. There we go. 2 small and 2 large. And those should be 4 inches apart. So you can use your measuring tape to determine if they are 4 inches apart. That inner one is going to make it 4 inches apart. And I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Because they're 5 inches each, you're going to basically come in 1/2 inch on each side and make a dot, and that will make them 4 inches apart. And so that's what we're doing here. On the inside, you're going to center one piece of the stay tape over the seam line on the upper side edge of each front band section. So we have our front band sections. Remember, we did 2 of them. We did 2 of them, so let me move these to the side. Here is one. We're going to turn it to the inside. And remember that side that had one side that was ungathered and one side that was gathered. We're going to take the side that is gathered and we are going to pin, or we're going to take one of the stay strip pieces and we are going to put it right over the gathers. And you want to make sure that your side that gets pressed on to it, or that you're gonna, that, you know, in this case, because I'm using fusible, you want to make sure that that side is pressed down. And then it's telling you to kind of adjust your gather. So I'm going to use some clips, and then you're going to do a basting stitch over this. So I'm going to use some clips to kind of hold this down. There we go. And so this is going to fit on that 4-inch piece just like that. Oop, it's going to fit on there. Let me put another clip on just so you can see how it's going to fit on there. So that is how it's going to fit right on there. Just like that. Just like that, it's going to fit on there. Then you're going to basically baste stitch that piece across. All right, and then you have your stitch in there, and you're going to do it. Okay, so I'm going to take the other piece, again in the same location. You're doing the side that has, so this is your front piece. One side has the edge that was not basted. You're going to, that was not gathered. You're going to take the side that was gathered, and you are going to stitch. You're going to, pin your stay tape. You're going to center it right over those gathers. And then you're going to adjust your gathers so that pretty much that stay tape fits right over all of your gathered pieces. You may need to adjust your gathers, like by pulling those strings, if necessary, to ensure that it all fits under there. If you use the gathering foot, it's going to be really close. You might have to like push a couple, together closely, but it will fit. And this is how it will look once you have your stay stitch tape put on there. It will look just like that. Okay, here we go. So you're going to take 2 pieces of stay tape. If you do not have stay tape, you can use fusible interfacing that is made for knits, and you can cut 2 5-inch pieces of interfacing to create your stay tape. Then you are going to place a dot 4 inches apart. So you're going to go about a 1/2 inch on either side, one large dot, one small dot on these 2 pieces. Now we have our 2 pieces. We are going to place these 2 pieces on the larger, on the curved edge, but it's going to be the larger of the 2 curved edges. So you're going to basically place that stay tape in there, and we're going to put a basting stitch to baste it down. So you're going to center it from one end to the other end. Use clips to kind of hold it down, and you're going to use a basting stitch right across the center, covering your gathers. If you use a gathering foot like me, you will have to, kind of push them in there so that they all fit within the stay tape. If you used a baste thread method to basting stitch method to create your gathers, then you could just pull on your tails to tighten your gather so that it fits within the stay tape. So now I'm about to make a basting stitch right across this, and then I'm going to repeat the same thing for the second piece of the front band. And again, it's the larger. Remember, you have a on one side of your band, you have a small section of gathers, then you have a space, and then you have a large section of gathers. This is going in the large section of gathers. And this is what it will look like. And we're going to do the same thing on the other piece. Okay, here we go. And now you can see this is in there. Here we go, all covered. Okay, so now the next step is that we are going to we need 4 more pieces. We need 4 more pieces, and we now need these pieces to go down at this bottom part. So the top part of this is gathered. Remember, we have the gathered side and then the ungathered side. We're gonna now we need 4 more pieces. So let me cut. Here we go. 1, 2. Okay, so we have 4 more pieces, and we are going to put and let me just turn these over. And we're going to do a large dot and a small dot. Same thing, large dot and a small dot. All right, there we go. Okay, so we have our 4 pieces, and it says on the inside center, 1 piece of okay, and we are going to take this piece and we're going to base stitch it right onto here. And we're going to do the same thing on the other piece. You do not need this piece right here unless you want to add extra support, then you can. But but where you're required to do it is on the unbasted piece. That is where you need to do it. And then the other 2 pieces you're going to use on the back band. So we're just going to put a basting stitch in here right across these 2 pieces, 1 here and 1 here. And there you go, right across there. We'll do the same thing with this one. we have done it on both sides. Now we are going to gather, we're going to get piece number 5, which is the back band. We're going to take piece number 5. And you should have just one that you cut on the fold. And we are now going to gather everything between the dot, the large dot, and the small dot. So let me illustrate this using the pattern piece because it's so much easier to see. Okay, so here we go. Here is the large dot, and this is the small dot up here. You are going to gather from this large dot to the small dot on both sides. So we're going to do that right now. Okay, and there we go. We have our gathers completed for the back. And now we do need to go in and put our stay tape and we're going to put it here, and we do need to kind of match it up a little bit, similar to what we did with the other. It may not match exactly, but you're going to have to kind of, if you use the gathering, basting stitch method to create your gathers, then you will just, pull your tails to create a tighter gather. If you used a gathering foot, you're going to just kind of place them in there. It will be quite easy to kind of push them in there because they're already kind of going in that direction. And then you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Take your piece of stay tape and line it up from one end to the other. And we're going to put a basting stitch in there. I usually just take one end, clip one end, clip the other end, and then just put some clips in the middle, making sure that all of the gathers are kind of fitting in there. Like that. Okay, move them, make sure it's not too much in one location. There you go. Just like that. And now we're gonna stitch it right across and both sides. Okay, so now we have finished stitching those on. We have both sides stitched, and then the bottom half is open. Bottom half is open, top half is got the stay stitch in, stay stitch for the top half, and then the bottom half, or vice versa. Yes. Okay, so here we go. So this goes on one. So we're basically taking each side of our front. So this is our back piece. Here, I'm going to lay this right side facing up, and we're going to work with one side at a time. So this is one side. We're going to take our one piece of our front, and we're going to match up the flat or the ungathered part. We'll clip that together, lining up those raw edges. and then the ungathered part as well. Lining up these pieces as well. And we're going to do a stitch that's going to go straight down this piece. And so that's again one front side, and we need to do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to take our other front piece and we're going to line it up the same exact way. I'm going to flip it over and we're going to clip together we'll clip these together like this. Again, we're clipping the front band pieces to the back band pieces. And then you have both the ungathered part. You're going to clip that together as well. Lining up the raw edges and the ends. Everything should line up perfectly. There we go. And then we're going to do the same thing, which is do a stitch straight down. So let's go ahead and do these pieces. Now, we have basically we have stitched together all of these pieces. It's the back, and these are the two front pieces. We have stitched them all together. We basically just folded it in half. We folded this in half, the whole, and then on the left front, we stitched just from the edge all the way to the dot, and then we clipped, or not to the dot. No, we clipped to the notch, and then we clipped down to the stitch, but not through the stitch. And now we are going to turn. Now we're going to turn this right side out. And then the first thing we're going to do is we are going to stitch together in the seam allowance. So I'm just going to clip these pieces, and mine is a little bit more difficult because my edges are curling, so it's a little harder to keep them all lined up, but nothing a little extra effort can't help with. So, okay, here we go. So we are going to stitch this together. So we're going to stitch this together in the seam allowance from this open edge. Yes, from this open edge. So this edge is the edge that's already stitched, that we stitched on the wrong side before we turned it right side out. And now we're going to stitch all the way across to the other side. Okay, now here is our bodice. And we're going to have this We're going to lay this out. And actually, we're going to turn to the other side. This is the front. This is the front of our bodice. So we're going to lay this out like this. So basically what you're seeing in front is the front of the bodice, and then overlaying that, you're seeing the front, it is the right front band. And you know it's the right front band because the edge is exposed all the way to the end. Remember the left front band, we stitched it on with right sides facing, and then we turned it out so it has a clean, stitch line. And then you would have had a stitch line that you would have had to draw either in chalk or some kind of way. And I'm just going to illustrate that by using the pattern piece. So here is the pattern piece, and your stitch line is going, depending on your size, it's going to be somewhere in this block of sizes. So if you need to, which is what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to use invisible ink and redraw this line, because you want the seam line, you're going to match the seam line to the stitch line. So the seam line of where you stitched your raw edge of your band together, you're going to lay that over your stitch line. You're basically going to stitch on it again. So I am basically just redrawing my line on top of the right side of my fabric with invisible ink that will wash away. I'm not doing it neatly, just enough that I could see it. And you're going to basically stop at the center. Remember, you had a V in that front, and that's where your dot lines up. You're going to stop there. Now line up. So this is my stitch line right here. And I'm going to line up that, again, the raw edge. And it's not the whole raw edge, it's just a part of it, as you can see, because this is higher. You want that seam line, that stitch line to be over that, the seam line to be over the stitch line. So, but you're going to line it up with the raw edges. So I'm going to do a clip there, and then I'm going to go get some pins. So I'm going to pretty much just pin, because you're going to stop at that center. So you want to make sure that you pin where you're going to stop. And I'm just going to put a couple of pins in here to really just hold this right on the seam line. All right, so I am going to stitch, and let me just zoom in so you can see exactly what I'm stitching. So I'm just going to stitch, let me zoom out maybe because I want to make sure you can see it. I'm going to stitch from this end, this raw edge, just on the front. So I'm stitching from this raw edge, this is along that stitch line, all the way up here, and this where the dot is, and the dot pretty much stops right at that V that exists at the front of your front bodice. It pretty much stops at that V. So that's where I'm going to stop. So I'm going to do that stitch now. So here is the This is the front bodice, and here is the front band, which I stitched to the stitch line. Okay, so let me just try to see if I can help make some sense of this, what I've done. So what you're looking at right now is the front bodice. You're looking at the front bodice, and right here, this right here is the front band. Now I have stitched that to, there was a stitch line that you should have traced onto your front bodice, and you're going to take the seam line from your, that when you stitched the, when you folded the front band in half, you stitched it together, you would have basically lined that stitch line up with this, the seam line up with the stitch line, and you're just going to stitch right over top of it. So now that you've done that, so you have the rest of your band and you have your top of your bodice. You're going to take these edges of this seam and you're going to line it up with the raw edge, the inside of the raw edge of your bodice. So let's get some clips and we're going to start clipping. So again, raw edge of your band, you're going to be, pinning it or clipping it to the raw edge of your bodice, but you're going to be pinning it to the wrong side. So make sure you got the actual raw edge. Okay, I do. All right, so you're going to be pinning it to the wrong side. So you can see it's probably a little bit hard to tell, but here is my raw edge of my bodice. Mine is a little bit curled because again, the ends of my fabric curling. And here is the raw edge of my bodice. I'm lining up those raw edges to the best of my ability because again, I have tricky fabric. Who knew that this velvet rolls like this? If you deal with rep velvet, you may already have known that it's going to do that. And you're going to continue to just line up those raw edges. And what it's saying is as you're lining up the raw edges, the seam, that seam of your band should line up with the dart. The seam of your band should line up with the dart. That should all line up. That's how you're going to know that it's centered. So again, you're pinning it to the raw edge. You're lining up that seam with the dart of your sleeve. And you're going to turn it over and continue to do the same thing. Continue to line up that raw edge. And again, in my case, it's a little tricky because my fabric, some of it is rolling, but you're lining it up with that raw edge and you are placing it on, you're placing the band on the inside. You're lining it up to the inside of the, or the wrong side of the bodice. So it's just a matter of where you are laying it. So again, here's the back of my bodice. This is the back of it. This is the inside of the back of it. And I'm taking this band, the raw edges of the band, and I'm lining it up and placing it, clipping it, or you pin it, whatever you prefer. And again, it's probably a little bit difficult to see because my fabric is curling, but I'm working with it the best that I can. It made it very difficult to sew this band together, all this curled fabric, and it's making it difficult to line it all up right now, but I am making it work. I think there is a trick where you could use stay tape to help take some of the curl out of it, but I didn't test it out before, so I don't want to do it. All right, now I want to make sure that as I'm going around to the other sleeve and I'm getting close to that dart, that I make sure that it lines up with my seam on my band, that the dart in the arm and the sleeve lines up with that seam on the band. And again, you're using stretchy fabric, so you can, you can stretch it and make it work. Okay, so now I've gotten to the other sleeve, believe it or not, and I am still, wrapping, doing this last little bit, wrapping back around. Again, still pinning it. Okay, so let's see. And then at this section, so when you get, so I've wrapped the whole thing around, got it all, kind of pinned on there. And then there becomes this point where you are basically crossing over. You have your, this is where you started. Scoot over some. So this is kind of where you started. And now you've wrapped your band all the way around. And this is the end piece. And you're like, okay, what do I do with this piece? Okay, so then you're basically gonna, when you get to this part, you are basically leaving that piece because you've pretty much pinned it all around. So you're not doing anything with this piece right here until after. So right now, this is what it should look like before you stitch it. Let me see, make sure everything's in. Oh yeah, here we go. So every piece should be in of the band except for this piece. Except for this piece right here. So let me just show you what that should look like. So here's your first band part that you, make sure this is in here. Okay, so here we go. Before we stitch, this is what we're dealing with. This is the bodice down here. This is the band. Here's the first part that we stitched to the seam line to the stitch line. And then we took the remainder of the band and we put it on the inside of the bodice. We aligned the raw edge of the band to the raw edge of the bodice, and we pretty much pinned it all the way, clipped it all the way around, lining up the seams at the shoulders with the seams of the band. And we did that on both sides. The seam of the shoulder, the seam of the band is right here. And the dart in the sleeve is right here. Those things should line up to the best of your ability. They should line up. And you might have to do some stretching like I did in order to make that happen. And then you're going to have this piece. All of that will go, you'll basically finish up that raw edge here. You're going to clip that all the way. And then we're going to stitch all the way around. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so so the band is already kind of turning itself to the outside. Turning the band to the outside. Okay, And this is what it looks like when the band is turned to the outside. And we still have work to do. We're putting together the last couple of pieces to this, which is connecting these side pieces. So we've turned it down, turned the band to the outside, and we now need to, it says that we're going to turn the band to the outside, we're going to turn down the band on the left side, and we're going to pin it to the front, matching the symbols, and we're going to baste. So this band piece, we want to basically clip it to the side, the front side piece. So you're going to clip it here or pin it here just to the front piece. And you're going to put a basting stitch in there. Same thing on this side. You're going to pin it right to the front side, pin or clip it. Right to that front side. And then you're going to put a basting stitch on each side. Okay. And now we are going to flip this wrong side facing out, because we need to stitch together the sides to fully enclose band. You want to make sure that you don't get your sleeves caught up in there. So tuck those under really well and pull out your side seams and clip them together. Remember that your side is going to be a little bit more bulkier because you have that gathered band in each side. So here's the one side clipped. And you can see, you know, it's basically you're going to do a stitch that goes right down that side, and you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Again, very, very important to make sure that your sleeves are tucked away, because you do not want to stitch your sleeves into the side. So again, I've clipped this all together, and now I'm going to stitch straight down the sides. Okay, side seams are together. Hopefully we've done it without affecting our sleeves. We'll know in a minute. Okay, it is stitched. The sleeves are here. Don't have any issues, it looks like. Again, this is all it's supposed to be wide, because it is going to be over your shoulders. So that is what this front part looks like. And that brings us to the last couple of steps, which are we have a We're not going to put the snaps on in this video. That's the very last step, to put the snaps on. Is it? Let me just check and see. So you have two more pieces, which are your front and back leg facings. And you have your crotch piece. Oh. Okay. So for these last few pieces, it is recommended that you use webbing to place on the wrong side of these. And that's going to be, there's actually three pieces. There is a lower front facing, there is a crotch facing. So let me move these out the way so you can see. This is the lower facing piece 6, and this is a crotch facing piece 7, and then this is the leg facings, which are piece 8, one for each piece. It's recommended that you use webbing, and you basically put webbing on the wrong side of these three pieces. You're going to put webbing on the wrong side of these three pieces. We're not doing webbing, but I am going to tell you how you put these pieces on, or where you put these pieces on. So the front and back crotch pieces. So the crotch piece, the back crotch piece aligns with the back, and you'll see that it actually fits into that piece perfectly. And then the same thing with the front crotch piece. The front crotch piece, let's see. It fits horizontally to the front crotch piece. And what these facing pieces do, they actually do help you because they help to secure when you put the snaps in, because the fabric stretches and you need something that does not stretch. Otherwise your snaps will come out, and that has happened to me. So I want to test an alternative, which is to use interfacing, a stronger, sturdier interfacing on the inside, and then turn it this way. And that way I'll be able to see if it's going to help secure. But basically what you would do is, if you have it, you're going to put the webbing on one side, on the wrong side, and then you are going to do wrong side, right sides together, and then you're going to flip it up so that the webbing is facing away from your skin. The same thing with the other side. With the back or the front, you're going to put the webbing on the wrong side, and then you're going to stitch it. You're going to stitch it this way, right sides together, and then you're going to flip it so that the right side of the material is facing your skin. And that's where you're going to put the clip, the snaps. You'll put two, it's recommending 2 snaps. So you do 2 snaps. I will do another video that shows snaps. And in fact, I think I have a video that shows snaps. And then once you put the snaps on, the very last step is to put on the leg facing. So you've already basically attached these two. This is all finished. And then you are going to take your facing and your leg facing, and you're pretty much going to do the exact same thing, except for you're going to do it with a zigzag stitch. And you are going to zigzag stitch, line this up all the way around, and then you're going to flip it to the inside, and you're going to do another stitch, like basically a top stitch. Zigzag stitch all the way around. It'll give you a nice finish to your garment, and you'll do that. There's one piece for one leg and one piece for the other leg. So those are the last steps of putting this together. I am going to try this on, make sure that it fits, And I will put pictures of this on the dress form at the end of this video so that you can see what it looks like. And I will also do another separate video for the finishing, just in case someone would like a demonstration of the actual finishing of this. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope that this was a helpful video for you. And I look forward to seeing all of your makes of this pattern. Thank you.